I get a notice talk to your audience due to Facebook restrictions. We can't see the names and profile pictures of your viewers. Send them a link so they can grant Be Live permissions to see their names. So the link is copied and it's going to go into the chat. So there you have it. Hello, Jack. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you, my friend Seth?
I don't know what the hell we're going to talk about today, Jack. I can't imagine.
I couldn't find anything in the news, Seth, that I thought was either funny or ridiculous.
Frustrating, isn't it?
It's really hard. Things have gone back to normal, except for
the complete and utter destruction of the GOP. Except for that. Except for that one little. Have you remarked on how far American politics has slid into the abyss and just absolutely? I was watching Cuomo last night, which is a mistake. Not, because I prefer to watch Rachel, but I was watching Cuomo last night, and he was talking about how he was having a conversation with his panel off air in the intermission, in the break, and his panel. He said, "Has anybody ever seen a congressional scandal this out of control? Have you guys ever seen anything this batshit crazy, off the hook, nuts before?" And I want to tell you, Jack, this guy hasn't resigned yet. I predicted he would resign tonight because Friday night, Easter weekend, it's the perfect time to do it. He's going away, man. He's going away for years. But before we talk about our friend Matt Gaetz, Congressman Matt Gaetz, let us thank our sponsor, Morse's Sauerkraut. Morse's Sauerkraut, where you can go to get your Easter brunch fixins. You can get the prosciutto and the prosciutto and artichoke heart spread that we see there, and some bagels from Union Bagel Company and some lox. And dig in. Our friends at Morse's Sauerkraut in Waldoboro would be happy to see you. Have you ever been out there? That's quite an experience going out to Morse's Sauerkraut. Have you ever been out there?
It was probably 4 years ago with Ian and Emily. Everybody was on bikes. I think Johan. It's wonderful.
And they have a wide variety of Swedish products there, by the way.
Oh, the place is absolutely awesome. I mean, it's in the middle of bumfuck Maine, but
it is. Well, where are you going to grow cabbage where you won't get complained about?
That's true.
Well, I don't know how much more time we can avoid talking about this guy.
Look at this first, though, Seth.
What's that, bud? Oh, hey, look at that.
Look at that smile.
Look at that Hollywood smile, man.
I'm glad you took that selfie of Gaetz, because I was going to grab that too, because it's extremely funny.
It is. But I think your Hollywood smile is much more attractive than his right now. I also love the look that you've cultivated this evening. As you dart out of camera with your Hollywood smile. I love the feeding time at the old folks home look you have on there with the bathrobe. It's fantastic. You need to just cultivate this more. I was going to wear like a linen shirt, in bright colors, but this kind of like, this is Eastery enough. Don't you think, Jack?
I don't know a lot about Easter, Seth. I'm sure you're more versed than I, but there was a headline today that says, talking about, it says his friend has been singing to the feds.
Who's friend?
That's why, listen up, that's why Matt is so freaked out. Gaetz's arrest is imminent as jail tax collector Joel Greenberg faces charges of having sex with same 27-year-old and making false IDs. Same girl.
I got to tell you that
Yeah.
if there's one thing that the federal authorities frown on, it is paying underage girls to have sex with you, paying them with both cash and drugs in the furtherance of transporting underage girls across state lines. The profound moral corruption of the GOP, because this guy and Donald Trump and Devin Nunes, they are the GOP.
Oh, yeah.
That's who the GOP is right now. The GOP is all about fuck you politics. And there's a degree of sociopathy that has the GOP in its grip, and it has not let go. The GOP, we thought you can say things, Jack, like, hey, the GOP is finished. They're done as a party if Trump gets elected. That's what Mitch McConnell said. He said, that could be the end of the GOP. Well, not a single one of us knew what that would look like. This is what that looks like.
I was thinking, Seth, I think when Trump got elected and he seemed to get away with absolutely everything, guys like Gates, there were a number of them, Moscow Mitch, a whole list of people said to themselves, you know something, William Barr, they said, if somebody this fucking stupid can do all these things and get away with it, I have an IQ that's 2 points higher than 78. I've got 80. Trump has 78. I should be able to get away with the same sexual, financial, corrupt dealings that Trump did. I swear to God, they did. This is what they.
I don't get how they didn't see the long game. I mean, this guy, Matt Gaetz, is just an absolute foaming at the mouth scumbag. But we hear stories about guys like this. I want to introduce you to a new person today, Jack. You ready to meet a new person in your lexicon of people that you know? Here we go. See this guy right here? Now that guy, I'm going to tell you what his name is because you're not going to know it. This enterprising young man is named Luke Ball, Ball. And this photograph is from Luke Ball's LinkedIn account. Well, who's Luke Ball, you may ask? Well, he's the founder of Right to Life Media, which is located in Washington, District of Columbia. And on his LinkedIn page, right after that job, for 2 years and 6 months, he served as communications director, Washington, District of Columbia, Office of Congressman Matt Gaetz.
We have another winner, Seth.
We do, but Mr. Ball, the aptly named Mr. Ball, is no longer the communications director for Matt Gaetz. He left, and he is one of Matt Gaetz' primo companions. He is his go-to guy, his right-hand man, his messaging champion. He's one of those smart Ivy League scumbag sociopaths that goes to D.C. and writes things that would make, Donald Trump very proud of them.
Nice. Yeah. I think what happened, though, Seth, is I think this guy Greenberg, because the list of his travesties, his felonies, is absolutely endless. I think what happened is they got him, okay? And he's obviously dumber than dirt, okay? And he decided it would help his case if he would drop a dime
Yep,
on Gates. And I think that's how this whole thing started.
I agree with you.
Did you see the picture of them with Stone?
Now, Jack, why isn't the show streaming to the fan page? Yes, it is streaming to the fan page right now, Jack.
Or wasn't it before?
Yeah, it is. It is now. Yeah. Please follow the links for permissions. And here's the show. It's live.
Do we have any viewers at all?
Yeah, we got a couple.
Could they introduce themselves to us?
Well, as long as they click that link, they can. If you're watching the show, you go on the fan page, you click the link on the Seth and Jack Show streaming link. I'm going to copy the link. I'm going to put it on your wall and my wall, Jackie boy.
Okay.
All right. Well, long story short, with Mr. Ball, we'll get to Mr. Greenberg in a second, but long story short with Mr. Ball is that he is, as of tonight, the former chief communications officer for Matt Gaetz. In other words, he adios muchachos.
Right.
This guy's got to go, man. I mean, Matt, I can't imagine why Matt Gaetz hasn't resigned yet. Kevin McCarthy has said that if he's indicted, they're going to remove him from all his congressional duties. So he's not going to be on any more committees. He's not going to be.
That's an about face. Seth.
I know it is.
Fucked
up. He really did fuck up McCarthy.
He really did.
Well, let me ask you this. Bigger question than this issue itself. When Cuomo's on the air the other night, he says, this is really unprecedented. There's never been a congressional. This makes Teapot Dome look like a tempest in a teapot.
Very good.
Thank you.
Obvious, but good.
What has happened? What has happened to politics in this country? What is it that has been responsible for the absolute moral collapse of one political party? Notice the Democratic Party is populated by decent people who care. Our political leader is, as elected by the American people, is a decent man who cares. As a matter of fact, if you had to say what your first impression of Joe Biden was, decent old man who cares deeply about his country, aside from the fact that he's enacting a liberal, a progressive agenda, the likes of which hasn't been seen since FDR. But what happened to the GOP?
I think I already mentioned it, Seth. I think that what happened was they saw a man in the Oval Office who could get away with absolutely anything. And they realized that was possible for the first time, that you could get away with absolutely anything. You could get away with pedophilia. You could get away with fraud, with tax fraud, of being a traitor, get away with treason, that you could, in American politics, get away with anything. And I think that they allowed themselves to all of a sudden, with very, very little subterfuge or cover-up, do what they felt was best for them.
So by your way of thinking then, and I hope you're right, and I hope it's not something broader and systemic.
Well, it's that too.
I know. But by your way of thinking and the logic that you've employed, the forthcoming and fucking certain indictment of Donald John Trump and the destruction of that human being should ameliorate this moral corruption. Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily, and I'll tell you why. I think that running parallel to this phenomena of realizing this kind of behavior was possible, that they realized at the same time that Donald was a distraction, taking all the heat, and they wouldn't be noticed as much, whether it's talks with the Ukraine, whether it's paybacks. I mean, the list is so long, it would take us longer than the show just to list them. The inauguration, Donald Jr. putting money in his pocket from the inauguration fund. It just goes on and on. And I think they felt that Donald was taking so much heat that they wouldn't be noticed, even as kids.
That's fascinating.
These people are not smart.
Yeah.
Seth. Yeah. Look at Ted Cruz. He's got to be one of the dumbest motherfuckers. I mean, he's stupid.
Well, I mean, he's not intellectually stupid, but he's culturally stupid. He's tone deaf. He's the kind of guy that would go down and have a moment in a gunboat, while there are poor people crossing the border and 9-year-old girls dying in the same body of water that he's trying to traverse behind a squad assault weapon.
Right.
That fires 223 Remington rounds at 1 billion rounds a minute. I mean, that kind of level of visual stupidity and political stupidity has saved the country from Ted Cruz. I mean, he's the kind of guy that would get tweaked on the nose by his own daughter and not realize every single time Ted Cruz gets in front of a camera, it's a Dukakis with a tank helmet moment.
It really is. It really is. It's absolutely, it's brilliant.
But you know what we do in this country? We forget we really do forget to remember who it is that we're talking about in the moment. Like, we are so drinking through the fire hose of information that, and on our laptops and phones, we're so deluged with new information that it seems like we've lost the ability to look back and realize, it's like we write people blank checks all the time and let them off the hook. Why don't you and I listen for just a second? I'm going to go on mute because we get an echo when I do this. Listen to Matt Gaetz talk at the RNC in 2020.
Roll it.
I'm speaking to you from an auditorium emptier than Joe Biden's daily schedule, but we are a nation of full hearts and clear minds. We see the choice clearly: strength or weakness, energy or confusion, success or failure. President Trump is the first president since Reagan not to start a new war. Biden has foolishly cheerled decades of war without winning, without end. President Trump knows we are strongest when we fight hardest, not in distant deserts, but for our fellow Americans. We must fight to save America now, or we may lose her forever. Joe Biden might not even notice. Settle for Biden. That's the hashtag promoted by AOC and the socialists. The Woketopians will settle for Biden because they will make him an extra in a movie written, produced, and directed by others. It's a horror film, really. They'll disarm you, empty the prisons, lock you in your home, and invite MS-13 to live next door. And the police aren't coming when you call. In Democrat-run cities, they're already being defunded, disbanded. Blaming our best and allowing society's worst, that's the story they write in Hollywood. That's if the lights even stay on in California anymore. A state that cannot keep power running for its own people should not send its junior senator to be vice president.
You know something?
Okay. Well, aside from the litany of things which are absolutely incorrect in retrospect.
Right, I know. He's very funny because all you have to do when he's talking is picture him on the airplane with the 17-year-old.
I know. I know.
And it was wonderful. You just picture him doing that. And it's unfortunate we don't have a clip of him being interviewed by Tucker Carlson, because of the look on Tucker's face.
Yeah, I mean, that Tucker Carlson's face is kind of like, Matt Gaetz went on Tucker Carlson and he knew he was in trouble. So what he tried to do is latch the anchor around a conservative icon's neck and take him down with him, and do the same kind of instinctual whataboutism that Republicans are so well known for, even when it's cannibalizing their own heroes, right? Well, that was Matt Gaetz, and he goes on and he says a bunch of shit that's just absolutely wrong. But you can also hold their feet to the fire on things that they said just recently. Now, here's Matt Gaetz on The View talking about what he thinks is going to happen in the election and the GOP worldview, literally in the middle of the summer of, or I should say, about a year ago, this month or the past month. So this is Matt Gaetz on The View about a year ago.
I do watch you guys make news every week.
Every day. We are the big political show.
I was just wondering if you were wearing black as a consequence of the death of the political left in the debate last night. It was quite something to observe.
Don't count the dead yet, the bodies. Let's give it a little time before we count.
Well, Joe Biden, at least. I mean, I was hoping that maybe Whoopi's bell could wake up the Biden campaign if you hit it.
I thought he was actually, he didn't do any harm to himself last night.
What state's he going to win? I mean, this is a man who's, the fundamental premise of the Biden campaign is that he's electable and he can't seem to win elections. So now you have socialist Bernie Sanders against billionaire Michael Bloomberg.
Yeah. Well, the Republicans love a billionaire. They love money. So what are you talking about?
Well, Michael Bloomberg used to be a Republican. It's fascinating
that right now
the Democratic Party is likely not going to nominate a Democrat. They're either going to nominate a socialist or someone who some time ago was a Republican.
Well, let's talk about...
None of them. I don't think any of them are going to beat the president. I think we have a raging economy right now. The American family is seeing revenue pour in as a consequence of higher wages, more productivity, more business investment, more capital coming from overseas into our nation.
Donald Trump was a Democrat first.
He was. We've all sort of been politically square dancing for a while, and I think that we're in a time of real political realignment in our country.
Let's talk about your boss for a second, because yesterday...
Well, my boss are the people of Northwest Florida.
Yeah, okay. So yesterday, Trump...
Well, don't dismiss them. It's the highest concentration of active duty military in the country.
It's true.
And I know Megan's dad served there, so you can attack me if you want, but don't attack my constituents.
I'm not attacking you. I'm asking you a question.
Okay.
Yesterday, Trump announced he's appointing another loyalist of his.
Okay, so that was all of a minute and 20 seconds, and in that he said 7 things that ended up not being true or coming to fruition. And
now, Seth, as I said before, think of him on the airplane with a 17-year-old. When I watch this, I think of him as the only one who didn't vote for new laws against child trafficking. The only one.
You can't make it up.
You can't. You know something?
We have to ask a question. What the fuck is wrong with Republicans? What the fuck is wrong with the GOP?
Seth, you and I have been trying to answer that for almost 5 years now. And all we can do is skirt around the edges with little ideas. I mean, this guy used Apple Pay to pay for the underage prostitute.
Well, all the kids use it.
I mean, they were on the plane together. Was she doing her long division, or what was she doing as he was writing his next speech?
Is that what the kids are calling it now? Long division?
That's what they used to call it. I don't know what they call it now.
I mean, seriously, as funny as that is, what the fuck is wrong with these people? This is the political party. Just a reminder, Jack. This is the political party of the moral majority. This is the political party of Ronald Reagan. there's going to be these people are not Americans. There's something else. They don't believe in American democracy, my friend. The idea that we could call these people American patriots, I think that time has long gone.
Seth, remember when Trump said years ago that if he were going to run, he would run as a Republican because they're so stupid they'll vote for anyone. And I think that answers your question. If you're a grifter, if you're a scumbag, wouldn't you rather be supported by a stupid electorate than maybe an electorate that would recognize who you are?
But it has become the only explanation that we can legitimately put forward here, Jack, is the one that you've just come up with yourself, where you said that it looks like nobody's actually minding the candy shop, and we're watching people's real selves come out.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like, from my perspective, the corruption of the party that's out of power is the unusual thing, because absolute power corrupts absolutely, but these people are out of power, and they were maybe under the illusion that they were in an autocracy. And if they realized themselves that they were in an autocracy and no longer in a democracy, that they could behave this way and get away with it. That's the only explanation I can come up with. So if they felt that they were in an autocracy, that means that they were all in on January 6th. And they were all in on that ethos of, this isn't America anymore. This is Russia light and autocracies.
Yes.
And Joe Biden said it the other day. Joe Biden said quite straightforward. He says the issue of our time is whether democracies can survive and autocracies are going to be pushed to the back. The issue isn't, communism versus democracy, Western democracy. It's autocracy versus Western democracy. And to be honest, that's really what it's been the whole time. It's almost a biblical conflict.
Well, corruption has always been rampant in politics on any level. What I think has happened in the last 4 years is that they have realized that the real big money, if you're corrupt, is coming from out of the country. So if you want to make big money, if you want the aluminum plant in your state, or if you want to launder millions and millions of dollars, that it comes from outside the country, not inside the country. And so you peddle yourself to the Russians to make sure that you help them lift sanctions. This is what you do. This is the real money. We're not talking campaign funds from AT&T or, you know what I mean? This is big money.
Yeah, but the only way that these guys thought they were going to get away with it was the idea that there's no longer checks and balances in a democracy. And that, to me, is the only thing that explains their behavior. But
they spent 4 years getting rid of those checks and balances.
Right, but they didn't get rid of the American people. And they didn't get rid of the election systems in the states. But now they're trying to. And so maybe this thing with voter suppression in red states isn't only the disenfranchising of black voters. It is the lust for authoritarianism that the right sees as their only path to retaining power. And maybe maybe the overthrow of the filibuster is the only thing that's going to save the country from them.
I think so. And keep in mind, this is 38 states, Seth. This isn't some breakaway group somewhere in the Southwest. This is ubiquitous. This is everywhere. This is the new theme of the Republican Party.
You remember when there was one candidate here locally, Jack, that was a Republican? And I fought so hard against this person who was an otherwise perfectly normal member of the business community. And
Right.
he asked me to support him. And I said, no, I can't support you despite the fact that we're friends, because Republicans simply can't be allowed to govern anymore. This is what I was talking about. Republicans can't. If Republicans govern, democracy is lost. And
That's very obvious from the last 4 years where that direction was going.
You off. I apologize. You were going to say something.
No, Seth, can you imagine if Trump had won?
No.
Oh my God.
No.
But once again, okay, I really believe this, Seth, that if you're a grifter, you're going to gravitate to the Republican Party because the electorate is stupid. End of story. They don't question. They don't want change. It's the definition of conservative. They don't want anything to change. Immigration, black voting rights, all these things they do not want. Okay? Because they're conservative, they're afraid of change, and they're basically illiterate. They're a group of ignorant peasants. Okay? So that's the group. If you want to convince somebody you're the Messiah, wouldn't you choose that group rather than Harvard educated whatever?
You know, liberal democracies are fragile things. And authoritarianism is a global threat at this point.
That's right.
And we all have nuclear weapons. And the ultimate overthrow of Western democracies would be a nuclear war. And faced with the removal of their own power, I can't see how autocracies have any other choice but the kind of existential endgame that we see Republicans playing out in their own states now. They have stated quite clearly, Jack, that there is nothing that they won't do to defend themselves. Nothing.
Well, nuclear war, you said the only way that this is going to happen is nuclear war. That's not true. Or I don't agree with that, Seth, because it almost happened without nuclear war.
Well,
and I would say we are farther away from nuclear war now, at least vis-a-vis the Soviet Union, because they have seen how close they came to taking over the American government without it.
Well, the North Koreans didn't.
Well, yeah, but that's, North Koreans. I mean, they target the Pacific Ocean and announce that they hit their target. I mean, let's be realistic about this.
How far away can they be?
Well, first of all, I don't think there's a chance in hell they can hit anywhere near what they aim at. An ocean is okay. They can fix that target, and if we're lucky, it's not going to overfly Japan, and
we had a big news story today. Brother Noah X, and of course, because we're liberals, we're not going to talk about it because it wasn't a Trumper, right? Isn't that what the right-wing media is saying all over the place? That Farrakhan is trending on Twitter right now because people are saying, because this doesn't fall into a right-wing extremist narrative, that the liberal media is not going to cover it as much.
So is he the driver of the car in the Capitol?
He is. Yeah, he's from Indiana, 25-year-old kid. Wrote a manifesto. Sounds mentally ill to me. Persecution complex, paranoia. Seems nuts. And he drove into a barricade and either killed a cop with his car or stabbed the cop to death and was killed by Dr. Remington's lead pills. And that's the story. So it's turning into a situation where the people's house is no longer accessible to the people because it's covered with barricades and all sorts of contraptions to prevent human beings from getting inside. And we have Donald Trump to thank for that.
I went to, when I went to Stockholm about 7 years ago with Johan, and we were walking down at the end of Strandvägen, and it's it's basically Embassy Row, which is all these embassies surround the Swedish television, which is a huge complex. The only embassy that had gates and protective gates was the American embassy. Go figure. So I was thinking,
Well, our embassy
let's
is
change.
targets. You know, our embassy
Oh.
is the number one target internationally.
Absolutely. So it looks like they're moving the All-Star game out of Georgia.
Fuck Georgia. Fuck Texas. You know,
Oh boy.
Texas isn't.
Now, let me ask you a question. Now that Delta, Dell, a number of other companies that are housed in Texas have come out against this law or these voting laws, what do you think will happen if they're still passed? Will the corporation be forced to do something that they don't really want to do?
No, I think the corporations will pivot to supporting the end of the filibuster, and I think that will result in them cutting off funding for Republican Congresspeople and senators campaign.
Well, they're between a rock and a hard place because they are going nuts about Biden's tax proposal.
Yeah, tough shit. Fuck them. I mean, now Mitch McConnell, he made this bed. You know, he made this bed, and now he's going to lie in it. And I'm sorry if it's covered in shit, but you shit in the bed. You know, Mitch McConnell's Senate bed is filled with turtle shit. Fuck him.
So, says at least 55 of the largest companies in the U.S. paid no federal taxes last year.
Yeah.
Including Nike, FedEx, blah, blah. Now, here's the deal. The way I understand it is that a majority of Americans want these companies to be taxed.
No. So the headline read like this. Majority of Americans support the infrastructure bill. When you tell them that it's going to be paid for by taxes of the ultra wealthy in these corporations, they like it even more.
That's right.
By the way, speaking of liking it even more, you and I were congratulated today by Be Live, our broadcast partner. And Be Live congratulated us for our 25th broadcast. And that 25th broadcast, this very one, is the broadcast that propels us to the 91st percentile of Be Live users. This show has lasted 91% longer. This show has lasted longer than 91% of other shows out there.
It just goes to show you how bad they must be.
Years.
So there was another headline. Now because we're really all we're doing most of the time is just talking about the Darwin Awards here. Okay. So
the political Darwin Awards. Yeah.
Gates or Greenberg, they're going to have to die to win, obviously, because you have to be dead to win the award. But here's a guy, and I love this headline. CEO who died when his plane nosedived into a dairy barn, killing 50 cows, lived a double life as a financier of international drug ring and had plans for a torpedo submarine to transport cocaine.
Some people, by the way, that's not the first time the idea of transporting cocaine in a submarine has arisen.
They've already caught them doing it.
When the Soviet Union fell, there was basically a yard sale of Soviet era weaponry and the such.
Right.
That was humiliating.
But can you imagine? I mean, it's the imagery that sticks with me. It's a light plane goes into the side of a dairy barn, killing 50 cows.
It takes talent, man. It takes talent. You know, that's why Mercedes didn't run Grand Prix for a long time, because in the 56 Le Mans, they killed 90 people. decapitated.
You're joking.
No,
Is that true?
yeah,
90?
something like that. A lot of people.
Was it at Nürburgring or where
No,
was it?
Le Mans.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. And they had it was a the car had a lot of magnesium parts, and they caught fire. And not only were the people decapitated by the car as it sliced through the crowd, it's
Right.
there was no crowd control back then.
Right.
People didn't have seatbelts. They put their babies in the back seats, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's horrendous. If you go to Indy now, the wire barriers would stop the Challenger. I mean, these things are serious, and they're all over the track.
Yep.
Aircraft cable, really thick aircraft cable.
Yep. Nothing getting through that.
Yeah, nothing at all.
No.
Except for brake levers and foot pegs and,
Stuff that won't hurt.
Small bits.
So, a happy Good Friday to you, by the way. Not that anyone who is a self-proclaimed quote Christian evangelical really follows the teachings of Christ and the Sermon on the Mount, as is evidenced by the current state of affairs with everyone who is a self-proclaimed evangelical. They support the worst people in the world. And it might be worth noting on Good Friday that many preachers are leaving their congregations. We mentioned this last week. It's worth mentioning again. Many preachers are leaving their congregations because their parishioners believe in QAnon more than they do in the messages of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
That's something we should be focusing on Good Friday.
It's very interesting to see how easily Christ can be replaced by a lot of these people.
Yeah,
the golden calf wit,
Yeah. By the way, good news for Ben Bryant. The Manhattan real estate market is bouncing back.
Well, there are a lot of places that are up for sale.
A lot of cash coming back to New York City. Their sales are up. The prices are up 14% since the beginning of the year. So very, very. It looks like
interesting.
The trend where people are buying every single property in Maine sight unseen seems to be on the wane. The Kremlin says that NATO troop deployment in Ukraine would raise tensions. Gee, you think? Fuck you. We don't care.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating? It's going to be interesting to see now, given that Putin doesn't have representation in the American government, or as much representation. You notice that Mitch McConnell's aluminum plant got kiboshed by Russia.
That's fabulous.
Probably because he didn't have enough swing on the sanctions anymore.
Yep.
In the Senate.
Yep.
And I have a feeling now that we're going to see a little bit of Putin unleashed.
Yeah. I mean, let's come back to that space as time goes on. I'm one of the things I'm rooting for Joe Biden on. I've had a hard on for Russia for 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
I need some, we need to take some scalps. I fucking had it with these people. And, expelling Russian intelligence officers living here is really the least we can do.
Yeah, I think freezing assets is always good. Unfortunately, Putin knows that down the road, if you get people like Trump and Moscow Mitch, that can be overturned with the right people in the right situation.
I suppose that's true. But the question I think that we're going to have to ask ourselves is, before we were talking about the progression, the way in which we get stuck in time, our temporal glue, that we're so deluged with information that we only think about what's coming in the future and we don't think about what Matt Gaetz has said in the past. And that's why we talked about, let's remember exactly who these scumbags are so we can delight in their demise even more as we move forward. That's really what that was all about.
Mhm.
But now might be a good chance to talk a little bit about what happens with now that, indictments are imminent for Donald Trump. He's going to get indicted by the state of New York, and he's going to get indicted by the city of New York, and he's going to end up being arrested, and he's going to end up.
I think Georgia may get to him first.
And he's going to get indicted in Georgia, and he's going to get indicted by the Justice Department, I think. We have yet to see what kind of prophylactic pardon he did for himself for federal crimes. But what is inevitable that comes out of all of this is the connections to the KGB that go back 40 years.
I wonder if it will come out, or if it's so sticky that given all this other criminal activity that he's going to have to answer for, some things may be a little bit sticky for Americans, like your president was a traitor.
Right. That's what I want to talk about. And that's what I want us to talk about and focus on for the next few weeks. Because it's a space that we thought that getting rid of Donald Trump got rid of the existential questions that we deal with as Americans. It didn't. We still face the same problems. We have an authoritarian world structure that is bent on undoing American influence because it interferes with their grasp for power. And we have to have the will to destroy them, physically destroy them if necessary. We have to have the will to incinerate people who want to incinerate us. Right? That's what this is going to come down to. We have to be willing to defend ourselves.
True. But to me, I'm fascinated when they talk about these big corporations, Coca-Cola and, Atlanta-based companies coming out against these state voting laws. And I'm thinking, remember when we talked about the power that people like Amazon, Apple, Twitter, Facebook, the power that they have. And then you talk about these companies and the power that they have. Is the government unnecessary?
That's what the machines are going to decide for us, aren't they?
Is it, or is the government what it is now? It's like a faux, it's like a puppet show.
Let me ask you, let's phrase it this way. If artificial intelligence was able to provide us with a revenue stream that didn't require work from us, what purpose would government serve? How would the machines be structured? Those are the questions. We're talking about authoritarianism versus Western democracy. We're really talking about the oldest storyline in the world, good versus evil. Good being the ability to generate compassion. And in the public space, I've always thought of compassion as the government having a safety net for people who are not able to deal for themselves, but at the same time, the government setting the preconditions for the accumulation of wealth and the attainment of dreams. That's what the government's supposed to do. And then that representing that governmentally, I think of as good. I think of evil as a lack of ability to have compassion for other human beings. And that's the GOP. That's who they themselves
Let me-
to.
Let me throw this out to you. Is it possible that in the future, under the techno-industrial complex, that democracy will be an outdated form of government?
I think it's probable. Code as law, right? It's a phrase we're going to be talking about soon. Code as law. So when code makes crime impossible, when code is the authority, when all of our creature comforts are taken care of, and the struggle between people is no longer necessary, what role does government play? Does a democratically elected government play in that equation? What's going to change that needs the input of humans in the programming of the machines? I mean, way out there. But then again, what the fuck else are we going to talk about on Friday night?
It's not that far out there, given that fascism, by definition, is that corporations and capitalism is more important than the individual. So when I talk about this techno-corporate culture, 50% of it is already there. Okay, which belies, of course, your idea that you show that compassion is the important thing, because your compassion is based on a stock blip, basically. And if you talk about where your needs are taken care of without working, that is the easiest way to get there now, is to own stock. Think of that. Okay. In other words, to be heavily invested in the techno-industrial culture. Think of that.
Yeah. I don't know, buddy. I don't know.
I don't either. I'm just throwing it out there because there's going to be some paradigm shifts that we never saw coming. Seth.
Yeah, I know.
You know that. I know that. I mean, in a way, coronavirus is one. Nobody saw that baby coming.
Yeah, it's true. But the depravity of people in power, at a certain point, Jack, you have to wonder what's going on. So they were all in on the insurrection. I posted a link the other day about how, from Seth Abrams, about how there was a pre-insurgency top-level meeting at the White House the night before.
You know, I saw that. Now, what was the source of that?
It's still out there. It's not something.
It's esoteric, right? That's why I questioned it a little bit.
Bank, yeah. It's one of those.
Right.
I mean, it's a good source, and it's the kind of thing that ends up in the rumbling Twitter network.
Mm-hmm.
And the rumbling Twitter network rumbles and rumbles and rumbles and produces a little pebble that rises to the top, and that pebble is the nugget that everything else is built on. Right now, it's rumbling and rumbling and raising that pebble to the top. It's there. There's a nugget there. That's the story's true.
Well, it's one. Remember when they said about Lyndon Johnson? Somebody said if he hadn't existed, we would have had to invent him.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with this. Of course, this happened. Whether the articles, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just look at everything as, of course this happened.
Yeah.
They had a high-level meeting on how they could take over the government.
I think Biden.
Of course it happened.
Biden's going to have to decide whether he wants to be nice and get shit done for the American people, or whether he wants to be the judge and executioner that he has to be, and go after his political enemies because they need going after.
Well, I think that he's going to delegate that, okay, because Kamala is more than happy to carry that cross, as well as the Justice Department. And now so that and citing that these are individual check government functions that are separate from each other, separate government things, he can just say it's out of my hands, which to me is the smart way of dealing with it.
I would just suggest get ready for the following headlines. Get ready for, in this order, Trump being indicted in New York and or Georgia, and then Trump being indicted in New York State, and Trump being arrested, and the rest of the dominoes starting to fall. Because we're all worried about a 2022 midterm election, and the GOP is going to be in utter chaos as 2022 rolls around, and the filibuster is. The reason the Democrats are doing big things, you have to read between the lines. They're doing big things because they can get away with it. They're doing big things because they can. They're doing
That's exactly right.
and they know what's coming. They know what's coming. They're doing big things because anybody that sides with the Republicans is going to look like a traitor.
Right. I think there's a certain thing about the American people, Democrats and Republicans, that there are two things they really don't want to have to face about Trump. One is that he's a traitor, which I mentioned. The other is that he's a pedophile. And I think it's very hard for the American people to digest that they were responsible, even the Democrats, for our country being led by this kind of individual for 4 years. You know, it's like Germany not admitting they lost the First World War.
It is kind of like the end of the Roman Empire, and that,
it is.
There are very few political questions, Jack, that are existential for the citizens. It's existential for us.
Yes.
Because what does that change of power look like? Well, it looks like me defending myself with a gun.
Yes, of course.
It looks like somebody trying to kill me, whether it's an American or a foreigner. It looks like years of warfare. That's what this looks like. It's not a peaceful process, bro. Authoritarians are not peaceful people. So that's why this undercurrent of anxiety permeates this conversation. This idea that all of these luxuries that we take for granted, Wi-Fi, phones, available food, clean water, all of these things that are post-World War II American, of course we have them. That's what's on the line here. We can either move forward as a democracy or we can all die. That's really the issue. Our enemies are foaming at the mouth watching us fall apart. And we have the Donald Trumps and the Matt Gaetz of the world to blame for it, but we really don't. We have the Republican next door to blame for it. And we have the system that created them.
True. Or collectively, all of us are just rubes on the fairway.
It could be we're rubes walking down the midway. It really could. It really, really could. With our fat, bulging wallets, and our ignorance, and our calories, and our softness.
I don't think Americans want to see themselves like that. No. And I think that they will go to almost any end to avoid looking at themselves.
Man, just as long as we continue to get ours. This is us getting ours, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Get some. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This is us getting ours.
Oh, yeah. Every day, Seth.
Well, coming up on an hour, Jack, it's a good place to wrap it up. I'm glad we're back on Facebook without jumping through hoops. I'd like to say for the people that are watching now, I got a notice from Facebook. Oh, yeah, your post didn't violate any restrictions. We've resolved that. You were right. Did they lift my ban? Nope. Not at all. Is my account still restricted And on warning status, sure. Unbelievable.
Seth, you must know, and everyone else by now, because it's part of our daily lives, it's ubiquitous, that talking to robots is extremely fucking frustrating.
Yeah, it is.
We do it every day. It slows us down. They don't understand shit. The people that program them don't understand shit. It is absolutely horrendous. The incompetence, whoever programs these bots. It's not that they can't do voice recognition. It's just that whoever programs them is an idiot.
Actually, the level of behavior that they're interested in seeing expressed on their platform is the most interesting thing. It's the most interesting thing. What do they think is appropriate human expression versus versus what is real appropriate human expression? Because I'm expressing a desire to see my country continue on. I'm expressing a desire to see Republicans face up to who they actually are. I'm expressing a desire to stomp out authoritarianism because I've had relatives that have been killed in the streets with machine guns, and I don't want to have that happen to others. And I don't want to have it happen to me. And more importantly, I don't want to have to do it to anybody else. And I fucking will. And when I do it, I'll have 100 years worth of rage behind it. That's an unhealthy
And then
man.
Ask yourself the question, how many Americans have ever heard of Belarus?
A perilous.
Amazing.
They call it.
And therefore, can you really expect them to react in a reasonable way?
No, but they do understand that people filled with hate in their hearts swept east and killed every Jew they could get their hands on. They know it, and they enjoy that.
Yeah. Yep.
It's those people that I really,
Yeah, no kidding.
Those people that think gleefully on the extermination of my family. What's going to happen when push comes to shove? You think I'm going to let them do it again?
No, and a lot of people won't, even people that haven't experienced it, because they are aware of it.
Annie, get your gun. Okay, my friend. We'll.
Good to see you, buddy. Always a pleasure.
I will. I'll talk to you tomorrow, I think.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, buddies, for joining us. Thank you, Jack, for your.
Thank you, Seth.
Thank you for your Hollywood smile.
And for dressing up.
Listen, enjoy the oatmeal at the old folks' home, will you?
Will do. That will be served promptly at 7 tomorrow morning.
All right, pal. You look great. You look great, by the way. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Daddy.
Bye, buddy.
Bye.